Welcome to a special edition of the Nightly Nuge. And Mr. Nugent, why is it so special today?
Well, because freedom is on the line. Here it is in November of Cluster Crank 2022, where evil is just permeating every element of our society. And there are warriors on the front lines to stop that evil. Good over evil, the foundational values of defiance and critical thinking and suspicion of authority is now coming to a head. And you and I, Keith, take this on every day. But we have another warrior fresh out of the mountains of the freedom hunting season of 2022. We have Donald Trump Jr., who has always been on the front lines. So on behalf of all the good, hardworking families in the asset column of America, Don, welcome and thank you for your relentless pursuit of good over evil and constitutionality over the communism that is around every corner. Don Jr., welcome to the Ted Nugent Nightly Nuge every damn day.
What's going on, guys? How's it going? Great to be with you guys, as always.
Yeah, well,
Spirit
thanks.
Warriors.
Last week, Don, Ted went through really all of the most critical issues that are on the ballot, dissected them one by one, talked about what he felt was the good side of the equation versus the bad. And today what we'd like to do with you is let's just throw out some races, because I know you have some strong feelings about most, if not all of these, Don. Ted does as well. And I think our listeners would like to hear what you guys think about these races. Obviously, I want to talk about some of the most critical states that are out there. Let's start with Arizona, probably one of the most watched elections in the country as far as governors go. It's that Kari Lake, Katie Hobbs race down there. But don't overlook the fact that there's a very close Senate race there with incumbent Democrat Mark Kelly and Blake Masters from the Republican side. What's your take down in Arizona, Don, and who are you supporting down there?
Listen, Carrie's great. She's become a very good friend. She's actually out there fighting. She's got, she's willing to step in and engage with the radical leftists the way we need to. She's just no holds barred. I love that. I think Blake Masters in the Senate, that would be, that'd be literally one of my favorites to have in there. Young guy, smart guy, actually is super conservative, but with a tech background. So he understands the battlefield that we are up against. He understands the insanity that we are up against. And, Mark Kelly, it's sort of amazing. Like, a couple of years ago when he first ran, you're like, oh, well, he's an astronaut. Like, watch the guy in a debate. He's an empty suit. It's actually hard to believe that this guy actually accomplished anything in his life. Like, he became an astronaut. I imagine that takes something. But you see him function out of that space, and you realize, he's a one-trick pony. Literally, probably, one of the guys most overrated in there. I saw the debates. I'm like, oh my God, he's got nothing. Like, he doesn't even appear to be an intelligent human being. And I'm not saying that, like, he's not John Fetterman. That guy's brain dead, like, literally. And the Democrats are trying to get him across the line in Pennsylvania in the United States Senate. I'd like to hear Ted's thoughts on this, but I've been called all sorts of things. I've been called ableist in the last week, which is like, you're racist against people with disabilities, right? That's their newest line. It's like, it's not racist to people with disabilities to expect a United States Senator to be able to have cognitive function, to not be brain dead. That's not like saying, well, he's in a wheelchair and he can think. That's totally great. Like, that'd be wonderful, but he's incapable of forming a complete sentence. And yet the Democrats are now trying to say, no, we should have a brain dead United States Senator because somehow, not voting for him is racist. We'll get to Pennsylvania in a little bit, but that as I digress. But the Mark Kelly thing in Arizona, he's for open borders. He's a rubber stamp for all the Democrat causes, but they all try to do that moderate thing. I'm a moderate because I was an astronaut. Well, he's not. Just look at his voting record. He's not moderate at all. He'll be an attack on the Second Amendment. He's for open borders. Now he's pretending he's not now, but just look at where he voted and look at what he voted to spend money on. Biden's insane spending stuff. So Arizona is really important. I think you also have with Abe Hamadeh, you also have a great chance to get a really strong attorney general in that state. And we've seen how important that is. So in Arizona, you just got to go, Kari Lake, Blake Masters, Abe Hamadeh, and just, get those three in there. And don't forget all the down ticket races. I think the one thing that we've perhaps missed the boat on is, we get focused on president and senator and even congressman and governor, and they're all really important. But like, vote for your school board. Find out who they are. The left has indoctrinated our children for decades now by having some seven-haired, colored, multiple, like weirdo freak who doesn't even want to ever have kids become, the head of the school board and the PTA. And those are the same people that got the FBI and the DOJ involved in literally designating concerned parents and mothers who were concerned about the BS that was crammed down their children's throat in school. They got them designated domestic terrorists. Now, remember, the people who burned down Waukesha and Portland and Seattle for 2 years, those were not domestic terrorists, right? Those were freedom-loving, peaceful protesters, right? Despite murder, arson, looting, rioting, burning down cities, the entire zones, Chaz or whatever the hell they called it. Those were not domestic terrorists, but a parent who went to school being like, I don't want you teaching CRT. I don't want you teaching my child that there's 9,476 genders and they have to learn them. Like, I'd like them to learn math, maybe English. Those people are domestic terrorists, but not people who are actually terrorists. That's why this one's so important, guys. Like it's become so common that every election's the most important election. Just look at what matters to the Democrats these days. These aren't like the Democrats from Detroit, Ted, that you grew up with, that were hardworking blue-collar Americans. Their biggest issues are like critical race theory, allowing 3-year-olds to decide permanently to change their gender and mutilate their bodies. Like, that's today's Democrat platform. It's ridiculous. It's disgusting. And we have to do something about it. Don't let these people have a pass. They locked you down. They made you watch your parents die on Zoom calls. They wouldn't let you in the room with them. They wouldn't let you open up your business. They wanted to shut down schools. They did everything in their capacity to crush your will, your existence, your freedoms, all of the things that we hold so near and dear. And now, as was written in The Atlantic last week, we'd like amnesty for all the things we did, because now we know a little bit differently. Do not give these people a pass. Okay, they have shown what they will do with their power when they get it. Just look at what's going on for the last 2 years. They've shown what they'll do. They've shown they'll weaponize it against you and everything you believe in and your families. We don't want to live in that America, because that America doesn't represent anything America has stood for before. That is the commie version of America, and that's what the Democrats want today.
If I may, Keith, Don, this is why we deserve each other. Ditto, 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 and not just ditto from the old guitar player, Backstrap Daddy. And I can tell right now you are high on the healing powers of nature, particularly the backstraps of the reward of your stealth and dedication to conservation. But everything Don just said, Keith, is resonating across this country. So we could examine each state, each election, each campaign, each candidate. But let me tell you, I've just finished 12, that's 12 campfires in the last 2-3 months. At every campfire are working hard, playing hard Americans, entrepreneurs, CEOs, cops, teachers, welders, mechanics, carpenters, hardware store operators, hardware store owners, just great, great inventive, work ethic, representative America heartbeat. And Don, I know that you connect with those people, particularly as a hunter. You're in the camps with these people that earn their living, live within their means, and save for a rainy October day. So you have people with priorities, and every word that just came out of your pretty little mouth there is alive and well at all these campfires. So it's great that you and I have a visibility, and that Keith and I have a nightly news, and I have a Real America Voice Spirit campfire. I do media every day. But when you speak, Don, when you speak, Keith, when we identify the glaring difference between the rotten, anti-human, not just anti-American, not just anti-freedom, anti-constitution, the agenda lick for lick, and the horror story that we're living right now because of the Democrats' agenda is so obvious. And let me tell you, when we speak, yeah, we have a platform, we got media, we got a camera. I'm in the man cave, cuckoo's nest arsenal of democracy in the swamps of Michigan with a computer so I can speak to the globe. Don, you represent word for word, belief for belief, God, family, country, Constitution, Bill of Rights, 10 Commandments, Golden Rule, work ethic, the man in the arena that takes risks and makes sacrifices so they can be in the. I got goosebumps because I've been listening to these moms and dads and brothers and sisters and sons and daughters and grandparents and World War II vets and Vietnam vets and Gulf Storm vets and law enforcement heroes that are watching the Democrats side rejoicingly with the engineered recidivism of violent crime explosion. That is a direct result of the Democrats' belief system. The murder, the slaughter, the carjacking, the raping, the indecency of trafficking, sex trafficking children, mostly unaccompanied children. No, those are military-aged men from all kinds of hellholes around the country walking across our border while this commander-in-chief numbnut is claiming that the footage is not real and that they're not walking across our border. So I could wax poetic forever. But Don, thank you for that.
It's decline by design.
Yes,
okay, that's what the Democrats want. Because look at it. I mean, look at the economy under my father, or what the things that were going. You had energy independence. You had a booming economy. You had low inflation. You had peace deals being signed in the Middle East rather than, potential nuclear war. The closest we've been to the Cuban Missile Crisis, to it since the Cuban Missile Crisis, according to even the Biden administration. Like, you can't have that quick a reversion if it's not on purpose. The Democrats, they need people to be dependent on them. That's why they're for this big government. You see, the Soros DAs that you're talking about, there's one in Missouri. The Soros DA won't prosecute the Democrat staffer who's working on one of the campaigns for like a bad sexual thing with a minor. They won't even prosecute him anymore. This is a trend that I'm seeing. It continues. And everyone's like, well, you guys got a chance to do this. And it's like, guys, no. Ted, you have a platform. I have a platform. But look at what we're up against. How few conservatives actually have a platform. The left has the entirety of big tech, virtually the entirety of social media until you had Truth Social. But like trillion-dollar industries, all of academia, most of pop culture, most of even, at this point, the leadership of the FBI and the military, not the door kickers, because those guys are sick of this crap. But the leadership has gone woke because government went woke. And the only way to get ahead was do that. And I was having a conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago. I was like, how did the generals go woke? They go, well, the reality is that there's not really a desire for war on either side anymore. After the endless wars we've been in, understanding it's gotten us virtually nothing, neither side wants to do it. So the generals got woke because their retirement plan used to be getting on the board of Raytheon and selling a bunch of missiles back to the government, and you get paid seven figures, millions of dollars to do this. But now that there's not a desire anymore, they need to get on the corporate boards, and the corporate boards have gone woke. And therefore you have military generals like Milley, and who could not have seen it coming, in his own words, the Afghan withdrawal. Couldn't have imagined that the Taliban would, you have idiots like our Secretary of State who got on a world stage and said they're shocked and dismayed, Ted, that the Taliban did not install a more diverse and inclusive government, because that's all that matters. It doesn't have to be a good government or a smart government. It has to be diverse and inclusive. That matters more than anything. But I'm watching as a sentient being, someone with a brain, and saying I don't know, guys, after 20 years in country, did you really think the Taliban was going to be really diverse? Did you think there was going to be a trans coalition in the Taliban government? I don't know. I've been watching videos of these people throwing homosexuals off a building for 20 years. I don't think they're going to be all that welcoming. But if you believe that to be the case, you have no business in power. And yet this is what the Democrats are doing, right? They can't believe it. Joe Biden's taking credit for a 10-cent reduction in gas prices by draining our strategic petroleum reserves. These are the same people that gave my father crap when he was like, hey, man, I don't know where this is going, but we're going to take advantage of all-time low oil prices, or at least, relatively speaking, all-time low oil prices, to fill up the strategic petroleum reserve. They went crazy. Now they've drained it at 3 times the pricing, and it's insanity. But this is what's going on with these people. It's decline by design. We are a nation in decline because we are letting people that don't love our country, and the globalists, and the people who These are the people we elect them to represent us. I feel like the Democrats are working for literally everyone but America. And our enemies are watching and they're laughing their fucking asses off, Ted, because they're watching a nation just destroy itself from within, led by a group of imbeciles.
You know,
Well,
on the
once
topic
again,
of
Keith,
imbeciles,
I want to emphasize that the words out of Don's mouth, I hear it everywhere. I heard it at the sushi bar in Jackson, Michigan the other day. I heard it at the feed mill. I heard it at the hardware store. People come up to me at every cafe, no matter where I go, and particularly these campfires, because it is a cross section of the most important, positive, hardworking demographic in the United States of America. So, Don, a big salute to you. But now the answer is, as we identify all these buildings on fire, we can't just identify the buildings burning. We have to get Americans who care to grab those hoses and put out the flames, and that's called voting. We have got to vote these core values, and this is the deciding factor in America. So, Don, I got to tell you, you're an all-American hell-raising shit kicker, the son of a greatest president ever, but you are a down-to-earth guy, and you understand that the pulses that you just articulated, those aren't Don Jr.'s hunches. Those aren't opinions. These aren't opinions. I see the footage. I know the people. I see the caskets. I see what the Democrats have done to America, and if the conservatives don't show up in unprecedented numbers to vote the core values against this runaway evil, then I got to tell you, the founding fathers' prediction that this constitutional republic will only last as long as we fight and vote for it. Vote for it. Vote for it. Everybody has to vote these core values because the devil is not at the door. He's in the vestibule. We got to get him the hell out of here.
Yeah, Don, Ted, we got to get that. We got to, everyone has to bring out everyone. They got to bring their friends. They got, we got to overcome the margin of bullshit or cheating, as what it really is going to be. You already see the Democrats. Well, third world countries can count their votes in a day. Every country in Europe can do it basically in a day. We may need a few weeks on this one. They figure out we got to overwhelm it that they can't play whatever games they may be playing. Okay. And I'll get canceled for saying it, but give me a break. When they're already a week out from an election, they're saying, well, we may need weeks to decide who's winning. We got to overwhelm it. You saw them. They could cancel the most powerful man in the world. Okay. That's how this bureaucracy works, and the deep state. And they did it to my father. They can do anything. We must overwhelm it. In 16, they didn't see it coming. They probably did the same thing. They just didn't think they needed as much. In 20, they weaponized every aspect against conservatives. And look what it got us, right? Joe Biden, unity. Then he gets up on a stage with a fascist, evil dictator backdrop and calls 75 million Americans the greatest threat to freedom and democracy ever. I mean, he's done nothing to unify our country. You saw the speech just, I guess it was 2 days ago or yesterday, where he basically got up and did the same thing. And it was the same speech, pretending unity, but demonizing, vilifying Americans. And it wasn't about unity. It was about trying to drum up any sort of enthusiasm from the radical left to make sure they turn up. You saw the lunatics on The View yesterday. I can't believe it. White suburban women are actually going to be voting for Republicans. That's like cockroaches voting for Raid. Now, of course, if I said that about other demographics, it'd be called racist. But Sonny Hoskinson say it on The View. But what have the Democrats done to deserve it? They tried to just, again, I think perhaps suburban white women, they've probably enjoyed virtue signaling for the last few years more than actually what makes sense, because maybe they don't have to deal with a lot of the issues that hardworking Americans have to deal with. And again, I am a son of a billionaire from New York. I don't pretend that I'm not. Okay. I don't hide from that. I get it. I shouldn't understand these things. I shouldn't be able to articulate this. I shouldn't be pissed off when I'm filling up my truck or going to the grocery store. But because I hang out with so many regular hardworking Americans, and whether it's in a hunting camp, whether it's on the weekend shooting, whether it's in the swamps in Florida, on air, I see it. And if I'm pissed off filling my truck, they should be. And again, that suburban white woman saw what these Democrats wanted to do to their children. They see the decline in the test scores. And finally, even they can say, you know what, maybe the Starbucks isn't as important. Maybe I don't need to be loved, by the other woke lunatics in our bubble. maybe I actually have to start voting my interests and the interests of my children and their future. And that hopefully will finally now override the social pressure of what it's been to virtue signal, in the era of Trump, where everyone gets sort of credit from the lunatics again, in their vacuum by being anti-Trump. It's like, name a policy that Biden has put forth that has been good for you or our country or our future or our children. Look at what again, they want amnesty from everything that they said during COVID, the lies, the BS that they sold you, the weaponized narratives. They want amnesty. Hell no. Hell no. And we have to start fighting this way. For too long, Ted, I mean, you're a rare exception. I'm certainly a rare exception. But conservatives on our side of, no, live and let live, turn the other cheek. These people would put you in the gulags, Ted.
Yes.
They'd lock you, and they've said it. They're not even hiding the fact, anymore. They're saying the quiet part out loud. They'd lock you up and throw away the key, along with all of your rights, all of your freedoms, your children's future, their education, livelihoods, everything. They could care less. If it's even close this time around, I'm worried that it's too far gone to ever solve. That people would vote against their own interests. That some of these races are even close. Like I said, Fetterman versus Oz. Like, Oz is a guy that's living the American dream. He's made it. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a world-renowned doctor. Like, he's someone that could add value in the United States Senate. You compare that to a guy, John Fetterman, who wants to release violent criminals into your towns, wants to push the Democrat agenda, cannot form a complete sentence. And I understand he had a stroke, but they knew that before the primary, and they still wanted to push him because of his radical ideas. And it's now racist to be like, I need a guy in the United States Senate to have an IQ above 3. Oh, that's terrible. We need to represent all people of all IQs in the United States Senate. They have lost their minds, but people have to wake up to it, because don't kid yourself. The media is out there giving $1 billion versus free commercials for any of the leftists. We saw a stat the other day. I think it was 87%, negative towards Republicans and for Democrats from all of the media, local and otherwise. People who haven't been paying attention, people who are just busy trying to put food on their plate and feed their families, they're listening to the news in the background. It's just noise, but they're hearing some of these things and they believe it to be true. That John Fetterman's a wonderful guy. He is great. Look at him. He wears Carhartts. Guess what? I have Carhartts too. Just because you wear Carhartts doesn't mean you do Carhartt stuff. Okay, you don't do Carhartt shit. John Fetterman lived in his mom's basement till he was 45. Okay, somehow lucked into a political position. He dresses the part. Yeah, he's got the goatee and he wears a hoodie. Guess what? He's none of those things. He's a radical leftist lunatic clown. And now he also happens to be brain dead. Now, I feel terrible that he had a stroke, but because he had a stroke and you feel bad, doesn't mean you give him a seat in the United States Senate as one of 100 people making life and death decisions for the future of our country. You don't do that because you feel bad for someone, okay? You set up a GoFundMe account for his well-being. You don't give him a seat in the United States Senate. We have lost our goddamn minds.
So, Don Jr., you look at these polls all across the country, and, you've got close races down in Georgia. Georgia has some of the best we the people we have to offer. You talk about what's going on in Pennsylvania, where Dr. Oz is trailing in some polls, very close in others. Go to Wisconsin, go to Michigan. Look at these states that have really the very best we the people has to offer. Are we really that far down the trail of doom, Don? That
I'm worried about it. I mean, we'll find out. We'll find out on Tuesday or within 2 weeks of Tuesday, according to what the Democrats are telling us. But Michigan's a great example. Gretchen Whitmer is even statistically speaking, one of the worst governors in America. With what she did to small business and the lockdowns and the things that she pushed. The fact that the Gretchen Whitmer Tudor Dixon race is even close is mind-boggling. Tudor Dixon, conservative, mother of, I guess it's 4 kids, understands these things, business owner, all these things against the hypocrite who voted for lockdowns while her husband's on vacations and all of these things. Again, Don't forget all of the school board people that they wanted to shut down schools. We can't do anything. We can't be mobile. We can't even do remote learning because we don't want to do that. Now, we still want to get paid, obviously. We still want to get 100% of our salaries. We just don't want to do our goddamn jobs. That Michigan could even be close. And Ted, I'll let you speak to this because this is, your home turf. But Gretchen Whitmer was literally on paper one of the worst performing governors in America for small business, for your family, for your economy. She spent the last 6 months of the disaster, trying to run for vice president. To show you how great she was, even Joe Biden wouldn't choose her over Kamala Harris, which is, sort of a testimony to how disastrous even he thought Gretchen Whitmer was, because she worked that one hard. How is it even close? Michigan has got to vote for Tudor Dixon. You want to see a repeat of these things? Charlie Crist down here in Florida is talking about bringing back mask mandates because they saw a little spike in something. Guess what? It also happens to be November. It's flu season. There's going to be a spike of all of these things. He's ready to go back to, these policies of lockdowns and mask mandates. What the hell is going on? I thought we were supposed to trust the science. Trusting the science based on everything we know now tells us that these people not only were wrong, made every mistake imaginable, but they're fine doubling down on the ridiculousness.
Well, certainly, I'm right here in the swamps of Michigan. It's where I was born when Detroit was the arsenal of democracy. The work ethic was the shining example of what mankind is capable of. And that spirit, that pulse, that great white buffalo man in the arena is still alive and well here in Michigan. But I'm a Texan now because the regulations, the rules, the cronyism, the defiance, the refusal to be fiscally accountable, they spend and spend and spend. So Gretchen Whitmer is a curse, just like Joe Biden. She sides with Joe Biden on all these horrific anti-American, anti-human policies. I know Tudor Dixon. I've had some great conversations with her, and I'm helping her in the state of Michigan. And again, even though I'm a Texan resident, but I have a sacred family tradition here of a hunting season with my family and friends and do charity work for the great heroes of the military and law enforcement. And again, these campfires that I share, it is a shining example of what you represent, Don, what you and I represent every time: truth, logic, common sense, goodwill, decency, all the standard traditional values that make the greatest quality of life in the history of the world. Tudor Dixon and all these Republicans that are running across the country. Again, we can examine every state, every campaign, every jurisdiction, but Tudor Dixon versus Gretchen Whitmer is just repetitive over and over again. Tudor Dixon is for positive spirit and accountability, law and order, God forbid law and order. And Gretchen Whitmer literally killed thousands of elderly by subjecting them to COVID positive environments. I mean, the list of atrocities and crimes by the Gretchen Whitmer, and again, put in any Democrat you want. I don't care if it's Mark Kelly in Arizona. I don't care if these freaks down in Georgia and all across this country. Gretchen Whitmer, in this once unbelievably positive, productive, freedom-drenched law and order work ethic state of Michigan, has gone down the toilet under the Gretchen Whitmers and the Jennifer Granholms and every Democrat that has come along. Because don't ever anybody forget that if there's a D after their name, they are engineering the worst crime explosion, violent crime explosion ever. If there's a D after their name, you and I have to pay for the pollution of Bangladesh and China and India. If there's a D after their name, they're releasing carjackers and rapists and child sex offenders and slicers and stabbers and shooters where they have footage of the smoking gun in the perpetrator's hand, and they don't charge them with a gun crime, but they want to add gun laws that they're not even enforcing the 10,000 already in the book. I could go on, but once again, Don, I got to salute you, man. Keith and I have created this nightly news that isn't about a Ted Nugent hunch or wonder what my opinions are. And here it is in a nutshell. A guy at the sporting goods store the other day went, "Hey, Uncle Ted, I love your political views." And I went, hang on. The Constitution isn't a view. I don't have any political views. I genuflect at the altar of truth, logic, and common sense, and the God-given individual rights that we know we have that are guaranteed by these sacred documents. We don't have views on whether high crime is good or bad. High crime is bad. We don't have views on whether a 3-year-old should be able to choose their sex. That's bad. What your dad did, lowest unemployment ever. So this is good or bad. Secure borders, this is good or bad. Getting out of the Paris Accord, wasting our tax dollars. Now we got Joe Biden sending trillions of dollars to Ukraine and the Taliban with our state-of-the-art military. And then we have a General Mark Milley. I believe he's a drag queen. I really believe General Mark Milley is a drag queen. I saw him. I think I saw him wearing spandex and pantyhose one day. And he's literally admitted on television, yeah, I called the communist Chinese military leader and let him know I'd warn him what our plans are. Don, if that's not treason, what in God's good name could possibly qualify as treason? So these are bullet points, but my friends, you, like I said on the campaign trail with you, Don, and with Cameron Haynes, and with your dad at all the rallies, just this core activist participants in the sacred experiment government isn't good enough. You've got to get your friends at the deer, at the shooting range, at the bowling.
We got to get involved.
Everybody recruit an army of conservative voters and vote like the future of your freedom depends on it, because the future of your freedom depends on it.
Yeah.
Hey, Don, some of the Senate races,
your children, your livelihoods, your well-being, they all depend on it. And you've seen what they're willing to do. Don't forget, these same guys that sent you brought up Ukraine, it's probably 75 billion by now. Just doesn't matter. It never ends, right? 75 billion to Ukraine. The same people that did that would not finish the wall for 3 billion. That would stop a sex trafficking crisis, human trafficking crisis, a fentanyl and opioid crisis coming across the border that's made every state in the country a border state. You can't have 3 billion for that, for the benefit of America, but we'll send 75 billion to what is literally statistically one of the most corrupt nations anywhere in the world, Ukraine. That doesn't make you a Russian apologist. Remember, I was like, why would they say, oh, you're a Russia apologist? It's like, no, I'd like to know where we're sending $75 billion. That's a lot of money. If 3 billion for the wall for our border is a lot of money, according to these same people, but 75 for someone else's border isn't, that's something that I can't understand. So I needed to explain it to me, but they can't. All we're doing with that money, as far as I'm concerned, it's a kickback to Big War, who watched Big Pharma get rich over the last 2 years and say, hey, guys, it's our turn. Or we're making the next class of Ukrainian oligarch, where all these guys that are smart and tough and, over there and totally corrupt will steal billions of your hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And they'll own a yacht in the south of France in the not too distant future, because it's coming. This money isn't just, it's going to be a total disaster. And the idiots that couldn't have seen it coming in Afghanistan and were hoping that the Taliban was going to be more diverse and inclusive, they ain't watching what's going on with the money. It's just, again, virtue signaling. Oh, yeah, 75 billion, Russia bad. It's insanity. It's insanity. And yet it continues. So we need everyone to be involved. If you have one guy or 2 or 3 guys, you, me, and my dad, Ted, going out there, they can throw enough arrows and artillery at us to cancel us, to stop us. They can't do that if you have 175 million Americans that are watching this crap and are sick of this shit, and they get out there and they do the same thing. They can't do it, and they won't do it because they know it'd be a disaster. Look at what happened to corporate America, right? You have the Disneys of the world, you have the Netflix of the world. You had to have trans representation at the signing of the Declaration of Independence as a historical documentary. It's like, it wasn't there. It just didn't happen. Like, what? We can't even look at history without including the woke bullshit, whether it was there or not. Like, that's how far we've gone. And so we have to make sure we hold them accountable. Like, by the way, we have to do this in our everyday lives. Don't go to Starbucks and give them your hard-earned dollars, to buy a $7 cup of coffee. Like, find a conservative business. As the economy goes to hell, and it's going to go to hell, right? Then the media will say it's the Republicans' fault, but the Democrats put us on this track that I think is almost irrecoverable without a lot of pain in the not too distant future. Take the time, seek out, a business that has your values. Give your money to them rather than to someone who will take your money and donate to the woke bullshit causes that are out there. I've actually been helping a couple of companies like this. Go to Public Square. It's just publicsq.com. find conservative businesses in your area. These are guys that sign up and they have our belief system, and they're more than happy to put that out there. You're going to be searching for it anyway. If you're traveling, if you're local, like, support your local businesses, support the people who value your beliefs, because the other side's been doing that forever. We've been sort of, no, whatever, to each his own. They've shown that they will take your money and weaponize it against everything that you believe in. We cannot do that anymore. I'd love for us to have one economy that's going, but I see this bifurcated economy where you have a red state economy growing because we have to, because we don't have a choice, and because people are finally fed up. They've gone too far on the left. We have to counter back, because they've shown that there is nothing that they will not attack. There is nothing that is off the table in terms of decency, honor, or otherwise that they won't try to cram down your throats. We have to push back and fight back accordingly.
Amen.
Don Jr., Ted and I have spent a lot of time talking on the nightly news. You and I back in 2016 with Ted, trying to get conservative hunters, gun owners, conservationists out to the polls. For some reason, in the data, which Ted and I it was brought to our attention by your dad back in 2016, and you really, for whatever reason, hunters, the demographic that we all associate with most of the time, statistically, they don't vote in big numbers. And if they do, they always vote those conservative values that Ted talks about here every night: God, family, country, law and order, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And so in 2016 and 2020, Ted and I worked really hard to turn out hunter conservative votes. We're doing that right now. We talked about it earlier. MSNBC actually highlighted a group that we're all working with, Hunter Nation and Hunt the Vote, as actually trying to make the marginal difference in some of these critical states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan. What would be your message to the hunters out there that oftentimes just set out elections due to apathy?
Well, listen, I mean, clearly, there's overlap with the Second Amendment community there, and the Democrats have shown you exactly what they feel about the Second Amendment, right? But you don't think deer season's on the table eventually? The same people that are advocating, trying to ban any kind of, hunting beyond deer. So no, we're never gonna go after deer season next. Like, we got to get out there. Like, if we think that they're not coming after hunting, like, I'd say hunting to these people is probably a bigger red flag than anything that you could ever have in the Second Amendment community, maybe outside of, full auto class 3 stuff that, the idiots making the legislation on don't even understand or could comprehend. If hunters think that they're going to leave hunting alone and they just want to be left alone in the fall and November, and, trust me, that I hunt for that same peace and quiet and solitude, but like, that is all on the table, folks. Like, there's 100% chance that these people will it's death by 1,000 cuts. You see, they want to eliminate hound hunting, and then it's a little bit further. No, but we're never going after deer hunting. Sure, like, you haven't gone after everything else that you said you weren't going to go after. That's what they do. They're smart. They take a little win, death by 1,000 cuts. Little win, little win, little win. Then we wake up, and it's too late, folks. You got to get involved. Just, beyond that, I've seen, I've spent a lot of time in hunting camps. I've spent a lot of time around those campfires. Some of the best times in the world really formed sort of my mindset on life. And I know these people share those values. Like, it takes 2 seconds. Get out there and vote. Like, you'd be insane not to. And I know that 99.9% of the people could look at the Democrat platform that I've ever been in hunting camp with. And again, not just people I'm traveling with, but people that I've met along the way that may not necessarily be even Republicans. Guys, look at what's going on. These are common sense people. Look at what's going on. And if you think that the Democrats represent even a modicum of common sense, then fine, vote that way. But like, common sense has been out the window for a long time, and we have to act accordingly.
Ted, you talk to hunters all the time. You're out on the trail trying to get hunters to vote. Why is it so important?
Well, obviously, what Don just articulated is 100% accurate. They have been already cutting back on freedom regarding hunting. For example, here in the state of Michigan, I've got about 1,000 boxes of shotgun shells behind me right here, and at least a few hundred of them have a picture of a mourning dove on it, because the mourning dove is the most hunted family hours of recreation, revenue-generating conservation activity in the world. More people spend more money and more hours dove hunting than anywhere else. And here in the once great state of Michigan, They lie, the DNR lie, and I made sure I let them know that we know they lie, that they call the mourning dove the number one game species, not just the number one game bird in the world, federal migratory game bird, the mourning dove, where we kill tens of millions of them every year because they're delicious and they have to balance the populations. And they call it a songbird. So they've eliminated a dove season in Michigan. Here in the state of Michigan, we have the most bow hunters than any state, than any jurisdiction on planet Earth. More bow hunters in Michigan, the great land of Fred Bear. And there are certain parks and areas of this state where you're not allowed to bow hunt, even though we've proven it's been effective and safe and perfectly proper in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and all kinds of urban situations, because the deer herd has expanded into urban situations. And here in the state of Michigan, they still won't allow us to bow hunt where these deer are overpopulated, being slammed by cars every day, destroying the agriculture in a certain jurisdiction. And they, with our tax dollars, they hire sharpshooters to come in and shoot these deer at night with infrared over feeders, while we're not even allowed to use feeders. We're not allowed to do any of that stuff. Those are our deer. So this is two examples of how this 1,000 cuts have already been slicing away. So hunters, and again, Keith, I think we've made a great impact. We saw the statistics back in 2016 when we created hunternation.org and huntthevote.org. I hope everybody joins me. Hunternation.org and huntthevote.org. And the percentage of hunters that didn't vote was not only shocking, but embarrassing. We have turned that tide, and we proved it in 2016. We proved it in Virginia. We proved it in North Carolina. We proved it in Texas with school board votes. We finally got these ultra conservative demographic army to get up off their apathetic, embarrassing ass and vote. So everybody, if you're not voting your core values, the enemies of America would like to thank you. It's about voting that conservative lifestyle, conservative, conservation, constitution, freedom, the ultimate conservative voting army in the world, I believe, are licensed hunting families. But if you sit it out, shame on you. That is giving the country over to the enemy. So huntthevote.org and hunternation.org is where we circle the conservative wagons. And I hope we're circling them effectively right now.
Don Jr., a couple of last points. Is it even possible to predict what's going to happen next Tuesday as we look back to what happened in 2020?
It's a little hard. Listen, I think it's safe to say that I probably spent more time on the ground in 2020 than anyone across the country. I mean, even in the midst of a pandemic, just for a frame of reference, I was told I did 104 rallies in the month of October 2020 alone. 104. So it's like 4 a day. Okay. In 2020. I probably did as much in 2016. And if you ask me going into election day on 2020, which was better, between the two, no brainer, 2020. So we got to be out there. We got to overwhelm. No freaking excuses. No this, that, the other. We just got to get out there, and do it. It's interesting. If when elections go our way, the Democrats, they want to deny them. When they go, when they go their way and someone else calls nonsense, all of a sudden it's an affront on democracy. We got to get out there. We got to vote our values. We got to say enough to the hypocrisy. And I think more importantly, we have to do it so overwhelmingly that we finally send a message to the Democrat Party. Joe Biden has had this thing where he says, this is not your father's Republican Party anymore. Damn right. Damn right. That Republican Party, we'll lose. Doesn't really matter. We'll let them take over every institution, in America. We don't really care. We finally matter. But don't forget, this isn't your father's or your grandfather's Democrat Party anymore either. Ted, I mean, you talked about Detroit being a sort of a bastion of light in American manufacturing and ingenuity for years. Yeah, and that was all blue-collar Democrats. Today's Democrat Party doesn't represent those people even a little bit. Even a little bit. They couldn't care less about your jobs. They've been busy taking your job and your American dream and exporting it to China for the benefit of woke corporate America so that they can save 2 cents and some CEO who hates your guts, your freedoms, your value, and your religion, he can make $100 million extra dollars. It doesn't work anymore. So we got to get out there. We got to overwhelm the system. We got to do whatever we can to prevent as much nonsense as possible. People have to be motivated. People have to get involved. people don't just have to, again, worry about president, Senate, Congress, governor. Worry about who's getting on your school board. Worry about who's going to be your district attorney, because these people are heavily funded by people who hate your guts, and that's why they're getting these things, and that's why district attorneys, even in places that are reasonable, are not prosecuting crimes, because that's against the ethos of the radical left that has been funding these campaigns. Ted, you brought up, we were talking, Gretchen Whitmer versus Tudor Dixon in Michigan. Like, what about Lee Zeldin versus Kathy Hochul in New York? It's insane. Like, Lee's a veteran, a strong conservative, common sense guy, and it's close. It's like, do the radicals in New York City that have watching innocent people, and one of them was a good friend of one of my dear friends, being thrown in front of a subway by lunatics, and then, we cashless bail, just let them out so they can do it again and again and again. And they're wondering, how are crimes going through the roof? We don't understand. We don't understand. These people are idiots. It shouldn't be close. So if you're in New York, vote those values too. Like, honestly, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is it basically stays the same, because it can't get any worse. I left New York for the same reason, but there are people still there that share our values. Like, vote for a governor that has a chance of getting things back on track. So vote for Lee Zeldin there. I mean, you could do this state after state, but it's hard because we don't have the trillion-dollar machine of big tech, right? Censoring our opponents while artificially boosting us. They have that. We don't have the same in social media, boosting the platform of the radical left, pretending that John Fetterman's a moderate blue collar guy. He's not. Again, just because he wears Carhartts doesn't mean he's a blue collar guy working in a factory. He lived in his mom's basement until he was like 45 years old. And now he's, a contender for the United States Senate in Pennsylvania, and he may be brain dead. Like, I mean, even Dr. Phil, I think he was on Oz or on Rogan the other day talking about it. And he said something like, if you got on a plane and John Fetterman was your pilot, would you stay on it? The answer is hell no. Then why would we let him be a United States senator? Like, think about it. So vote for Dr. Oz there, but you can do state by state. Look at what Raphael Warnock has done in Georgia, versus Herschel Walker. Again, if Walker has a flaw, it's highlighted by the media day in and day out and day in and day out. It doesn't matter. Raphael Warnock, there's like credible accusations he was beating his wife and all. No, we can't talk about that. We can't talk about that. I mean, if Republicans got the benefit from the mainstream media, from big tech, from social media that Democrats get, there would be investigations in the Federal Election Commission for in-kind contributions to the tune of billions of dollars. People would go to jail, but because they're all on the same team, nothing to see here. It's like Hunter Biden, right? If I did the Hunter Biden shit, it would be a serious problem, and it should be. But because it's the Biden, I don't know, it doesn't matter. He can do. That's not that bad. He's only money laundering for sex traffickers. He's only taking $1 billion from China despite having no real investment and experience. Like, if I did that with more experience, it would be a real problem, and it should be. It should be. I'm not saying I should be immune to it. I'm saying, there is no equal justice under the law with this government, with this Department of Justice. And that's not just Democrat or Republican. That's like establishment. So, we also have a chance, in the slate, whether it's, J.D. Vance in Ohio, right. Again, Blake Masters in Arizona. Like, you have a chance to get some guys that'll actually push back against our own establishment, which is also really important. Because we need some checks and balances on the BS coming from our own side.
In my own home state, Don, we've got, Derek Schmidt running against Laura Kelly at the governor's spot. And I can't, as, a conservative Kansan, I can't even believe that those polls are close. We've got our friend Chris Kobach running for attorney general. And the Democrats are running ads that Chris Kobach is anti-constitution. And those of us that know
Chris Kobach is one of the hardest constitutionalists I've ever seen in my life. But that's the point. They will run it like he doesn't believe in the Constitution. Meanwhile, the radical, leftist that's there, no, it's a moderate. I'm like, but if you look at his position, I mentioned J.D. Vance in Ohio. They're doing that with Tim Ryan. Like, Tim Ryan voted for federal funding for illegal immigrant children to have sex change operations. But if you watch the commercials in Ohio right now, you'd think that he was a moderate Republican. He's not. He's a radical leftist. Tim Ryan in Ohio has voted 100% of the time. not less than that, 100% of the time, and I'll let them fact check me, for the Pelosi-Biden agenda since that's been in place. 100%. He's a rubber stamp for Pelosi and Biden. He is a Pelosi Democrat, not a moderate. But again, according to the media, no, he's a moderate. Remember what they told you in Ohio, right? Joe Biden said it in his own, we'd never cancel pipelines. We'd never destroy energy independence. And yet on day one, he signed an executive order ending Keystone. The Democrats, they'll tell you anything they need to hear to win. Once they win, they go to D.C. and they do the bidding of the radical left. There are still moderate Democrats left in America, Keith. There are. There's just none in office because you can't win in office. You know, Chuck Schumer, he's spending $7 billion in this race this weekend, $5 billion in this race, $4 million in this race. Last minute, this is all California, New York money. They're not representing like Democrat Ohio values. They're representing radical California values.
Right.
Pushing those into those races. That's the reality. So while there may be moderate Democrats still left in America, there are none representing you. And I think this is an incredible opportunity for Democrats to take 2 years and to say, hey, Democrats, you better start representing Democrats, not just the lunatic fringe of Hollywood, because that's who they're catering to right now, because that's who's raising them the money. Like the Democrat Party has to shift back to, you can disagree on certain subjects, but not on like the general well-being of America. Not on like our economy at the expense of everything. Like that's not up for grabs as far as I'm concerned with moderate Democrat voters in America. But it's totally off the table with radical leftist extremists that represent you in government. Send them a message on Tuesday.
Well, Don, we really appreciate you joining us. Ted's got to jump on another interview, and it's just the three of us here visiting. So is your dad going to run?
I don't know, boys and girls. We'll find out. I hope so, because again, we need someone to get us back on track, right? And then you can let someone else run it from there. But you need, this kind of disaster. This doesn't get fixed with delicacy and little nuance. Like you need a sledgehammer to fix this economy, to fix this craziness, to fix the global stage. Guess what? Russia was never invading Ukraine if Trump was at the helm.
Well,
but they see Joe Biden, they say, hey, with that kind of weakness, who wouldn't? When's China going into Taiwan? Probably soon, because they see the leadership, I'll put it in air quotes, meaning total lack of leadership coming from Democrats, coming from Joe Biden, who's only slightly more with it than John Fetterman. And they say, this is the perfect time to pounce, because that's the nature of predators. They take advantage of weakness. That's what's going on. That's no different than hunting. They take the weakest of the herd.
If he runs, Don, I love Trump Nugent. And if he decides not to run, I love the idea of Nugent Trump Jr.
Oh, that could be interesting. Ted, we'd certainly get a couple people's heads exploding on that one. That would be a couple. I mean, like 150 million lunatic leftists.
That would be worth the price of admission, I promise you. Well, Don, thank you for standing up. Give our love to Kimberly and the entire Trump family. We so respect and value your activism and your caring about this great nation. We do this on the nightly news, but you represent truth, logic, and common sense that is alive and well out there in America. Now we just have to vote that way, and we can save this country.
Thank you, boys.
Thanks,
Great being with you as always.
God bless you both. Thanks.
Godspeed, man. Good hunting forever, everybody. God bless you, man.